There are moments in life when pain feels like it has your address memorized, when betrayal comes from the ones you fed, when the people you trusted turn their backs, when the very hands you help are the ones that strike you. You sit there asking, God, do you see this? Do you see what they've done to me? And heaven seems quiet. But I came to tell you, God does see. He does hear. He does respond. The silence is not absence, it's strategy. God is never indifferent to injustice. He may not move when you want him to, but he always moves right on time. When they hurt you, God doesn't ignore. He records it. Every tear that falls from your eyes is counted. Every sleepless night is written in his book. You may not get the apology you deserve, but God keeps the receipts. He knows how to turn wounds into wisdom and pain into power. He doesn't just watch your suffering, he sanctifies it. He takes what others did out of cruelty and folds it into his plan with precision. When you think you've been abandoned, he's actually writing the next chapter of your redemption. Sometimes God restrains his response. You want him to deal with them now, to expose the lie, to reveal the truth, to make them pay. But he holds his hand, not because he's forgotten, because he's forming you, he's forming the situation. He's forming a testimony that will silence the critics. When he says, vengeance is mine, he means, let me handle it. Because if I handle it, it will be righteous. If you handle it, it will be revenge. God doesn't need to react, he responds. His response is measured, deliberate, and perfect in timing. And when he finally moves, he doesn't just balance the scales, he flips the entire table. The same table where they gossiped about you becomes the table where God feeds you in their presence. The same audience that mocked your downfall will witness your restoration. God never does payback in private. He prepares a feast right in the presence of your enemies so they can see that his hand was on you all along. He doesn't destroy your enemies, he educates them. He shows them that grace is stronger than grudges, and purpose always outlives pain. But before the table turns, there's a refining. God will use the hurt to purify your heart. You'll realize that what they did to you didn't define you, it developed you. The betrayal taught you boundaries. The rejection taught you self-worth. The loss taught you to lean on God and not people. You thought it was breaking you, but it was building you. God was burning away everything that couldn't go into your next season. You came out of the fire lighter, stronger and wiser. You stopped needing validation from those who hurt you because you found confirmation in the one who healed you. Then comes the reward. Every time you held your peace, every time you forgave instead of fought, every time you walked away instead of striking back, heaven recorded it. Restraint is not weakness, it's worship. You were proving that you trusted God more than your emotions. And when God rewards restraint, he doesn't just restore what was taken, he multiplies it. He gives you double for your trouble. Peace where there was pain, and purpose where there was betrayal. And when the story comes full circle, you'll understand why you had to go through it. You'll realize that God wasn't trying to embarrass you. He was revealing himself through you. The very story that once made you weep becomes the story that sets others free. People will look at your life and see the glory of God shining through the cracks of your pain. You'll be able to say, I was hurt, but I was also held. I was broken, but I was being built. I was attacked, but I was anointed. The same God who saw the hurt is the God who turned it into healing. He doesn't just respond to those who hurt you. He redeems everything they tried to destroy until your scars no longer speak of suffering, but of his unshakable strength. There are moments in life when pain feels like a private language between you and heaven. Nobody else sees the weight you carry. The ache that crawls into your chest at midnight, the silent tears that slide down your face while you're pretending to be strong. But the truth is this: God sees it all. Every sigh, every tremble, every unspoken cry that rises from your wounded heart is recorded in the archives of eternity. When people wound you, when betrayal sneaks in through the back door of your trust, God does not turn away. He bends down close enough to catch the tear before it hits the ground. You see, God is not indifferent to pain. Pain is sacred to him because it reveals the depth of your humanity and the reach of his compassion. Scripture says he bottles your tears and writes them in his book. That means nothing you go through is wasted or forgotten. The same God who numbers the hairs on your head has documented every heartbreak you've endured. When you feel invisible, you are not. You are seen, studied, and remembered by the author of your story. God is keeping the record not to punish, but to redeem. Sometimes when we are hurt, we look for human validation. We want someone to say, I understand what they did to you. I know how bad it was. But there are some wounds so deep that no human words can reach them. That's why God records them himself. He becomes your witness. He stands in the courtroom of heaven and says, I was there when they broke your trust. I saw when they lied on you. I heard the conversations they had behind your back. He doesn't forget, and he doesn't dismiss it. While you were falling apart, he was writing your restoration. The mystery of God's record keeping is that it's not about revenge, it's about remembrance. God keeps track of your pain so that one day he can measure your reward. Every tear is a seed. And seeds don't die, they germinate in the soil of faith. You thought those tears were wasted, but they were watering the ground for your next harvest. God is saying, I saw how they hurt you, but I'm also watching how you handled it, because your response to pain determines how God releases promotion. When you hold your peace, heaven holds your file open and stamps it with grace. The reason you're still standing after all that happened is because God didn't just record the wound. He protected the purpose beneath it. People may have touched your feelings, but they couldn't touch your destiny. They could wound the surface, but they couldn't rewrite the plan. God made sure that even in your pain, the blueprint of your life remained intact. That's why the same situation that tried to destroy you ended up developing you. You didn't just survive, you were documented as evidence of divine preservation. When the Bible says that God bottles your tears, it means that your pain is portable in his presence. He carries it with him. Every time you pray through pain, heaven tilts its ear. Every time you forgive, even when it feels unfair, God makes a note. My child chose mercy over madness. Every time you resist bitterness, he records it as worship. What people overlook, God itemizes. What they dismiss, he details. And while you are sitting in silence, wondering if anyone notices your suffering, heaven is building a testimony file with your name on it. Nothing escapes the divine ledger. The mockery, the rejection, the loneliness, the betrayal, all of it has been archived for redemption. You may not understand why it had to happen, but one day you'll realize that God never wastes pain. He collects it, studies it, and transforms it into purpose. Every wound becomes a word in the story. He's writing about your resilience. Every scar becomes proof that you were seen, known, and remembered. God records the wound because he intends to redeem the one who carries it. There are seasons in life when it feels like God is silent while injustice speaks loudly. You've prayed, you've cried, you've asked, Lord, why aren't you doing something about this? You expected lightning to strike, truth to come out, and vindication to roll in like thunder. But heaven seems still, no voice, no sign, no sudden move. It's in that stillness that God is teaching one of the hardest lessons of faith. He knows how to restrain his response. God is never in a hurry to prove himself because he already reigns from a position of victory. He does not react like man reacts. His delay is not denial, it is divine control. When you are hurt, your flesh wants immediate justice. You want to see those who wronged you feel the weight of what they did. You want a visible sign that God is on your side. But the truth is, God's restraint is often his mercy in disguise. If he responded to everything the way you wanted him to, he might destroy something he plans to use for your good later. He sees the whole picture while you see only the pain. He understands timing, purpose, and consequence. When he restrains his hand, it's not weakness, it's wisdom. In the book of Romans, he says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." That means he has already taken responsibility for justice. You don't have to fight for it, you just have to trust that he knows when to release it. There's a divine difference between reaction and response. A reaction is instant, emotional, and human. A response is measured, purposeful, and eternal. God always responds, but he never reacts. He waits until his movement aligns with his plan. The silence you feel is not absence, it's strategy. Sometimes God holds back because he's working on you before he works on them. He's shaping your spirit so that when he does move, you won't be ruined by the outcome. You think you're waiting for God to deal with them, but God might be waiting for you to heal. He cannot pour new oil into a bitter vessel. That's why he says, "Be still and know that I am God." He's saying, don't let your anger push me out of the process. You may not see what he's doing, but he's calibrating justice and mercy with precision. There are times when his restraint is your rescue. You don't realize how close you came to stepping out of character, losing your witness, or compromising your calling. God held you still because your reaction would have ruined your reputation. He restrained his response to protect his purpose in you. You wanted revenge, but he wanted reflection. You wanted proof, but he wanted peace. He held his hand so that you could hold your faith. You see, restraint is not God ignoring your pain, it's God preserving your destiny. If he punished every offense instantly, there would be no room for grace. The same patience he shows toward those who hurt you is the same patience he's shown toward you when you've fallen short. That doesn't mean he's overlooking the wrong. It means he's orchestrating justice on a higher level. His justice doesn't always come in public displays. Sometimes it comes through quiet reversals, unseen protection, and divine favor that speaks louder than revenge ever could. When God restrains his response, he's setting the stage for revelation. He's allowing the enemy to overplay his hand so that when the tables turn, everyone will know it was him and not you. If he moved too early, they'd think you orchestrated it. If he waited too long, you might think he forgot. So he moves at the exact moment that brings him glory and brings you growth. His timing may not satisfy your emotions, but it perfects your character. There will come a day when you'll look back and thank God for not responding when you thought he should have. You'll realize his restraint wasn't neglect, it was nurture. He was developing endurance, faith, and maturity inside of you. While you were waiting for him to move against them, he was moving within you. You thought he was doing nothing, but he was doing the most important work of all, teaching you that control doesn't prove strength, trust does. God restrains his response not because he's forgotten you, but because he's preparing something greater than revenge. He's preparing redemption. There comes a time when everything that was turned against you begins to shift. For a long while, it looked like you were losing. It looked like those who hurt you had the upper hand. They lied on you, walked over you, and seemed to prosper while you were left cleaning up the pieces, your broken trust. You prayed, and it felt like nothing changed. You watched doors close while others seemed to step into success. But what you didn't know was that God was quietly rearranging the scene. He was not ignoring you. He was setting up a reversal. When God reverses the tables, he does it in a way that no one can take the credit, not even you. He waits until the odds are stacked so high that only divine power could flip them over. The table is where plans are made, where people meet, where discussions about your name have taken place. There were tables where you weren't invited, rooms where decisions were made without you, and moments where your reputation was cut apart like bread on a board. Yet God, in his sovereignty, does not need your seat to change your status. He builds his own table, and when the time is right, he reverses the arrangement. The ones who conspired will have to watch you eat from the plate they tried to take from you. The same mouths that spoke against you will be forced to acknowledge the favor on your life. The reversal of the table is not about humiliation, it's about revelation. God uses the shift to reveal that he was always in control. You thought you were the victim of betrayal, but you were the vessel of divine demonstration. The very thing that was designed to shame you becomes the platform for your elevation. That's why David said, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Notice that he didn't say after the enemies were gone. He said, in their presence. God doesn't remove them. He repositions you. He lets them see the outcome they thought you'd never have. When God begins to reverse the tables, he turns pain into power. He takes your tears and turns them into testimonies. He takes what they meant for evil and transforms it into evidence of his goodness. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like loss was really transition. The setback was only the setup for the comeback. God was not punishing you. He was preparing you for visibility. You cannot serve at the next table until you've been humbled at the old one. That's why the reversal doesn't happen instantly. It happens in due season when your heart is healed enough to handle honor. You have to understand that when God reverses the tables, it's not only about blessing you, it's about teaching others who he is. Your enemies become your audience. They get a front row seat to the evidence of grace. They will see that the one they tried to bury has been resurrected by favor. They'll realize that your strength didn't come from your connections, your education, or your influence. It came from your God. The same mouths that cursed you will have to bless you without even meaning to. The same place where you were rejected will be the place where you're celebrated. That's the beauty of divine reversal. It exposes the weakness of the enemy's plan and magnifies the power of God's promise. When tables turn, they don't just turn around you, they turn inside you. You stop needing validation from the people who hurt you. You stop craving apologies that may never come. You realize that the real victory is not sitting at their table again. It's building your own with peace as your centerpiece. You learn that God's promotion is permanent because it's rooted in purpose. The people who once had power over your emotions lose their influence because God has seated you in a new position. The reversal is God's way of proving that no weapon formed against you will prosper. It may form, it may strike, it may even wound, but it will not win. The same soil where you were buried becomes the ground where you bloom. The same conversation meant to destroy your reputation becomes the reason your name reaches new places. God takes what was meant to humiliate you and uses it to highlight his faithfulness. Every table that was turned against you is subject to his authority, and when he decides to reverse it, nothing and no one can stop the shift. There is a kind of pain that does not come to destroy you, but to develop you. It is the kind of pain that God allows, not because he delights in your suffering, but because he sees something in you that can only emerge through the fire. Hurt becomes the heat that purifies. It burns away the false strength, the pride, the dependence on people, and the illusions that keep you from seeing who you really are. It is in the furnace of affliction that the pure gold of character is revealed. When God refines you through the hurt, he does not do it to crush you. He does it to cleanse you. Refining is not a comfortable process. It involves heat, pressure, and patience. The metal has to stay in the fire long enough for the impurities to rise to the surface. That is why God doesn't always take you out of the pain right away. He's waiting for the right temperature. The moment when the old version of you begins to melt away and the new version starts to take shape. You may think you are breaking down, but God says you are breaking open. The same fire that feels like destruction is actually construction. He is rebuilding your spirit with endurance, humility, and strength that cannot be shaken. The hurt you went through was not random. Every wound had a purpose. Some people were removed not because they were evil, but because they were essential to your refinement. God will use betrayal to teach you boundaries, rejection to teach you identity, and loss to teach you gratitude. He does not waste experiences. Every painful lesson becomes a chisel in his hand, carving you into the image of Christ. You prayed for power, and God answered with process. You asked for growth, and he sent adversity. You wanted wisdom, and he allowed heartbreak to teach you what intellect never could. There are some lessons that can only be learned through tears. You cannot truly know compassion until you have been broken by something you couldn't control. You cannot fully trust God until you've been stripped of everything that made you feel secure. Hurt has a way of exposing what's real and what's temporary. It reveals whether your faith was built on comfort or conviction. When the storm hits and you still stand, that's when you realize you were refined, not ruined. Sometimes God uses hurt to slow you down so you can hear him clearly. When life was easy, your schedule was too full for prayer. When pain entered, suddenly silence became sacred. The wound became the doorway to intimacy. You found yourself saying things like, God, if you don't heal me, I still trust you. That kind of faith doesn't come from comfort. It comes from refinement. It's the faith of someone who has walked through fire and discovered that God was in the flames the entire time. The process of refinement often feels like loneliness. You look around and see others thriving while you're in survival mode. But God isolates what he intends to elevate. He has to get you alone to shape you. He cannot refine you in the crowd because too many voices would distort his design. When he pulls you away, it is not rejection, it is redirection. He is removing distractions so you can recognize his hands at work. The same heat that drives others away is the fire that draws him close. Hurt also refines your perspective. Before, you measured success by applause. Now you measure it by peace. Before, you needed validation from people. Now you crave affirmation from God. Before, you sought platforms. Now you seek purpose. Pain has a way of rearranging your priorities until what truly matters becomes clear. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That shift is the mark of refinement. When gold comes out of the fire, it doesn't look the same. It shines differently because it has been purified. The same is true of you. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every moment you thought you wouldn't survive was God refining the raw material of your life into something radiant. He took what was fragile and made it fierce. He took what was wounded and made it wise. You emerged from the fire lighter, sharper and stronger, not because you avoided pain, but because you endured it and discovered that the hurt was never meant to break you. It was meant to build you. There are moments in life when everything inside of you wants to react. You want to speak up, defend yourself, expose the truth, and let everyone know what really happened. You want to return the same energy that was given to you to make them feel the sting they caused you to feel. But restraint is one of the most difficult and divine tests a person can face. It is choosing silence when words could wound, choosing peace when war feels justified, choosing to walk away when your pride begs you to stay and fight. Restraint is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the mark of someone who trusts that God can handle what you don't have to control. When you refuse to retaliate, heaven takes notice. Every time you hold your tongue, God writes it down. Every time you walk away instead of clapping back, you build unseen credit in the spiritual realm. Restraint is a seed, and God never forgets a seed sown in obedience. While you are holding your peace, He is holding your reward. While you are being quiet, He is being strategic. The world teaches that strength is loud, but God shows that real power is calm. Jesus stood silent before His accusers, not because He couldn't answer, but because He knew destiny didn't need defense. That same restraint is what positions you for promotion. It takes more faith to stay still than it does to strike back. Anybody can react. It takes maturity to resist. God honors that maturity because it proves that you have learned to trust His timing. When you release your right to revenge, you open the door for divine recompense. God has a way of repaying that no man can match. He doesn't just restore what was lost, He multiplies it. The restraint that cost you today becomes the reason for your overflow tomorrow. You may not see it yet, but there's a blessing attached to every battle you refuse to fight in your own strength. Restraint reveals character. It exposes whether your spirit is led by emotion or conviction. People may misunderstand your silence. They may call it weakness or assume you're afraid. But what they don't know is that silence is strength under control. You are not ignoring the wrong. You are surrendering it to a higher court. You are saying, God, you see, you judge, you handle it. That decision shifts the weight from your hands to His. It's no longer your fight, it's His battlefield. And when God fights for you, victory is inevitable. There is a reward for restraint that goes beyond what people can see. It's internal first. God gives you peace that surpasses understanding. He heals the anger that would have poisoned your future. He preserves your integrity when you could have ruined it with one reaction. He protects your name while you stay hidden in His will. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not what He gives you, but what He keeps you from becoming. Restraint saves you from turning bitter, from letting pain become your personality. It keeps your spirit clean while God works behind the scenes. Restraint also sets you apart for greater responsibility. If you can be trusted to hold your peace, you can be trusted to hold power. God promotes the discipline. He rewards those who choose to wait on His justice instead of manufacturing their own. Think about Job, who prayed for the very friends who judged him. After he restrained himself and blessed them, God restored double what he had lost. That's the pattern of heaven. Restraint releases restoration. The more you resist reacting in the flesh, the more room you give God to respond in favor. When you let go of revenge, you make room for reward. God's way of paying back doesn't just settle the score, it elevates you above it. He rewards restraint with visibility influence and favor that no one can explain. People will wonder how you managed to stay calm while they fell apart. They will ask how you prospered without fighting back. The answer will always be the same. You chose to trust God instead of your temper. The moments you thought were losses were actually investments. Every time you stayed quiet, you were building a testimony. Every time you turned the other cheek, you were climbing a spiritual ladder. And when the time comes, God will open a door so wide that even those who hurt you will have to acknowledge that it was restraint, not retaliation, that carried you into your reward. There comes a time when you begin to see that everything you went through was never random. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the loss, the waiting, the tears that soaked your pillow at night, all of it was building a story that God Himself was writing. You didn't see the pattern when you were in it because pain blurs perspective, but when the smoke begins to clear, you realize that the author of your life never stopped holding the pen. Every chapter that made you cry was preparing a testimony that would make others believe. God never wastes a wound. He weaves it into a narrative that reveals His glory through your story. Sometimes the only way God can show His power is through the broken places of your life. He allows the cracks to remain so that His light can shine through them. The world is not moved by your perfection. It's moved by your redemption. When people see you smiling after all you've endured, they realize that something greater than human strength is carrying you. That's when they start asking questions, not about you, but about the God who brought you through. Your scars become sermons, your history becomes hope, and your pain becomes proof that grace is real. When God reveals His glory through your story, He doesn't erase the past, He redeems it. He takes the very moments that should have disqualified you and turns them into credentials for your calling. You thought your mistakes ruined you, but they actually positioned you. You thought your failures buried your purpose, but they became the soil where your destiny took root. The places you wanted to hide are the very places God uses to show others that He can heal what looks hopeless. The chapters you were ashamed of are the ones He highlights to display His mercy. The glory of God is not only seen in miracles, but in endurance. It's seen in the way you kept showing up when you could have quit, in the way you kept believing when everything said it was over. It's in the quiet moments of perseverance that heaven writes its greatest testimonies. When people watch you go through fire and still come out with faith, they recognize that something supernatural has been sustaining you. You become living evidence that God can take ashes and create beauty, that He can take what the enemy meant for evil and make it work for good. Your story is not just about survival, it's about revelation. God uses what you've been through to speak to those who are still in the struggle. He lets your deliverance be the blueprint for someone else's breakthrough. That's why your pain had purpose. It wasn't just about you. You were chosen to be a reflection of divine restoration. The very thing that made you feel forgotten was the stage for God to display that He never left you. You didn't just come out of the storm. You came out carrying evidence of His presence. There is something powerful about a person who has seen God in their suffering. They don't talk theory, they talk testimony. They can say, I know He's faithful because I've seen Him hold me when everything fell apart. That kind of faith cannot be taught. It has to be lived. When God reveals His glory through your story, He turns you into a vessel of influence without you even trying. People are drawn to you not because you're perfect, but because your story carries the fragrance of grace. Every valley you walk through becomes a verse in the song of His goodness. Every dark night becomes a line in the poem of his mercy. When you look back, you begin to see that the same hand that allowed the storm was the one steering your ship. The testimony of your life becomes a mirror that reflects his faithfulness. You realize that your story was never meant to glorify your endurance, but his grace. And though the journey broke you in ways you never expected, it also revealed a strength and a savior you never knew you had. Through your story, God makes himself visible to a watching world, proving that even in the deepest pain, his glory still shines brightest.